I never imagined that buying a snowplow truck would lead to the most insane neighborhood war in Breckenridge, Colorado history. But here we are, and I am still dealing with the legal aftermath 6 months later. My name is Scott Wilson, and I have been running a small landscaping business in Summit County for the past 8 years. When I bought my property on Glacier Ridge Road back in 2023, it was a dream come true. 5 acres of pristine mountain land, a cozy 3-bedroom cabin, and most importantly, it sat just outside the boundaries of the Pinewood Heights HOA. I specifically chose this location because I wanted freedom. Freedom to park my work trucks, freedom to store equipment, and freedom from the tyranny of middle-aged women with too much time and too little common sense. The property boundary was clear as day. My land ended at a natural tree line, and beyond that started the HOA-controlled community with their pristine driveways, identical mailboxes, and rules about what color you could paint your front door. I had zero obligation to follow their regulations, pay their fees, or attend their monthly meetings where they probably argued about holiday decoration timelines for 3 hours straight. Everything was perfect until February 2025, when Colorado got slammed with the worst winter storm system in 15 years. We are talking about multiple feet of snow in a matter of days, temperatures dropping to -20, and wind chills that could freeze your face off in minutes. My landscaping business naturally expanded into snow removal during winter months. I had invested in a beast of a truck the previous fall, a Ford F550 with a 12-foot Boss V plow blade that could move mountains of snow. That truck was my pride and joy, and it kept my business profitable when grass stopped growing. The storm hit on a Tuesday morning. I woke up to 3 feet of fresh powder and my phone ringing off the hook. I had contracts with local businesses, elderly clients who needed their driveways cleared, and the county paid me to keep certain rural roads passable. I was making good money, working 16-hour days and minding my own business. That Thursday afternoon, I had just finished clearing the parking lot at Rocky Mountain Medical Center when my phone rang. Unknown local number. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this Scott Wilson?" a sharp, nasally voice demanded. "Speaking. Who is this?" "This is Patricia Hendricks, president of the Pinewood Heights Homeowners Association. We need to discuss your responsibilities regarding snow removal on Ridgecrest Avenue and Timber Line Court." I actually laughed out loud. "I think you have the wrong number, madam. I do not live in your HOA. I am well aware that your property sits outside our boundaries, Mr. Wilson," she said in that condescending tone that immediately sets my teeth on edge. However, as the only resident on Glacier Ridge Road with professional snow removal equipment, you have a community obligation to maintain safe access to our neighborhood. "A community obligation," I repeated, making sure I heard her correctly. "Lady, I do not owe your HOA anything. I specifically bought property outside your jurisdiction. The entrance to Pinewood Heights connects directly to Glacier Ridge Road, which you use daily," Patricia continued as if I had not spoken. "Our residents pay significant HOA fees for services, but our contracted snow removal company has been delayed due to the storm. You have the equipment, you are already plowing other locations, and it would take you perhaps 30 minutes to clear our streets. Then wait for your contractor or hire someone else. I have paying clients. Mr. Wilson, let me be very clear. Our residents include several prominent members of the Breckenridge business community, a county commissioner, and at least 3 attorneys. It would be in your best interest to maintain positive relationships with your neighbors." That statement right there should have been my first warning sign. Instead, It just made me angry. Let me be very clear right back, Patricia. I do not work for free. I do not take orders from HOAs I am not part of, and if you ever threaten me again, we will have a problem. Have a great day. I hung up before she could respond and immediately called my buddy Derek, who lived in Pinewood Heights. Derek was one of those guys who never went to HOA meetings and paid his dues late just to annoy them. He answered on the third ring. "Dude, did Patricia Hendricks just call you?" he asked before I could say anything. "How did you know?" "She has been ranting about you at the emergency HOA meeting for the past hour. I am sitting in my truck in the parking lot because my wife made me come. Patricia is losing her mind that you refuse to plow our streets." "Derek, I am not in your HOA. Why would I plow your streets for free?" "Oh, trust me, I know. I told them the same thing. But Patricia has this whole theory that because you use Glacier Ridge Road to access your property, and Glacier Ridge Road connects to our entrance, you have some kind of legal obligation to help the community." She actually had Stephen Morrison look into it. "Who is Stephen Morrison?" "That attorney I told you about. The one who sued his previous HOA for $300,000 over a fence dispute and won. He is kind of Patricia's pet legal attack dog." This was getting ridiculous. "They cannot make me do anything, Derek. I am not bound by your HOA rules." "I know, man. I am just giving you a heads up. When Patricia gets something in her head, she becomes obsessed. Last year, she spent 6 months trying to find the Johnsons because their grass was a 1/4 inch too long, according to some obscure covenant from 1987. We talked for a few more minutes before I had to get back to work. I plowed until nearly midnight, clearing driveways and parking lots across 3 towns. The money was fantastic, but I was exhausted. When I finally got home, I barely had energy to feed my dog before collapsing into bed. Friday morning brought another 8 inches of snow and more angry phone calls. I had 23 voicemails, and 16 of them were from residents of Pinewood Heights. I listened to the first 3 before deleting the rest. "Mr. Wilson, this is Janet Carmichael from Pinewood Heights. My husband is a surgeon and he cannot get to the hospital because our streets have not been plowed. People could die because of your selfishness. Scott Wilson, this is Robert Chen. I am calling regarding your refusal to assist with snow removal. I should inform you that I am a corporate litigation attorney and your property uses an easement that runs through HOA land. We need to discuss this. This message is for Scott Wilson. My name is Patricia Hendricks and I am the HOA president. This is your final courtesy notice. If you do not clear our streets by 5 p.m. today, we will be pursuing legal action and filing formal complaints with the county regarding your business practices." I sat in my kitchen drinking coffee and trying to process the insanity. These people actually believed they could force me to work for free. The entitlement was staggering. My phone rang again. This time it was Maria Santos, my best client who owned a chain of local restaurants. "Scott, I hate to bother you, but I just got a very strange call from someone named Patricia Hendricks. She said you were unreliable and that I should reconsider using your services." My blood pressure shot through the roof. "Maria, I promise you I have no idea what she is talking about." "Did she say anything specific?" "She claimed you had abandoned contracted obligations and that your business ethics were questionable." "Scott, what is going on?" I explained the entire situation while trying to stay calm. Maria, bless her heart, actually laughed. "So this HOA president is calling your clients because you would not plow her streets for free? That is insane, and probably illegal. Scott, you should document this. I am happy to provide a statement if you need one." "Thanks, Maria, I will keep that in mind." But the calls kept coming. Over the next 2 hours, I heard from 4 other clients who had received similar calls from Patricia. She was systematically trying to destroy my business reputation because I would not donate my time and equipment to her neighborhood. That afternoon, I drove into town to meet with Alan Tucker, an attorney who had handled some contract work for my business. Alan was in his 60s, had been practicing law in Colorado for 40 years, and had very little patience for HOA nonsense. "Scott, let me get this straight," he said after I explained everything. "You do not live in this HOA, you have no contractual agreement with them, and they are now harassing your clients because you would not provide free services. That is exactly what is happening. And you have documentation of the calls to your clients. I have statements from 5 business owners willing to testify that Patricia Hendricks contacted them with false information about my business." Alan leaned back in his chair and smiled. "Scott, what this woman is doing is called tortious interference. She is intentionally disrupting your business relationships. You could sue her personally and the HOA for damages. I just want them to leave me alone, Alan." Unfortunately, people like Patricia Hendricks do not leave anyone alone until they are forced to. My advice is to document everything. Save all voicemails, keep records of any written communication, and get those statements from your clients in writing. If this escalates, you will want evidence. I left Alan's office feeling slightly better but still frustrated. I spent the evening plowing more properties and trying to ignore the constant stream of hostile messages from Pinewood Heights residents. Saturday morning, things took a turn for the surreal. I woke up to find a certified letter taped to my front door. It was from the Pinewood Heights HOA, written on official letterhead, and signed by both Patricia Hendricks and Stephen Morrison, attorney at law. The letter informed me that after careful review of property records, deeds, and local ordinances, the HOA had determined that I was in violation of several county codes regarding commercial vehicle storage, equipment noise violations, and failure to maintain adequate property screening. Furthermore, the letter claimed that my refusal to assist with emergency snow removal constituted a public safety hazard, and that the HOA would be filing formal complaints with the County Code Enforcement Office, the Business Licensing Bureau, and the Better Business Bureau. The letter concluded with an offer. If I agreed to provide snow removal services for all Pinewood Heights streets for the remainder of the winter season, the HOA would withdraw their complaints and we could move forward as good neighbors. It was extortion. Plain and simple extortion. I called Alan immediately. He told me to scan the letter and email it to him, which I did from my truck. 20 minutes later, he called back. "Scott, this is harassment and possibly extortion. The claims about code violations are completely fabricated. I checked your property records and business licenses. Everything is legitimate. They are making up violations to force you into compliance. So what do I do? First, do not respond to their letter. Do not engage at all. Second, I am going to draft a cease and desist letter to both Patricia Hendricks and Stephen Morrison. Third, we are going to file a formal complaint with the Colorado Bar Association regarding Morrison's conduct. Attorneys cannot use their position to threaten and extort people. Will that stop them? It should make them think twice. But Scott, I need you to understand something. People like Patricia Hendricks see backing down as weakness. If you want this to end, you might need to push back harder than they are pushing you." I spent the rest of the weekend thinking about Alan's words while clearing what felt like every parking lot in Summit County. The storm had finally passed, leaving behind nearly 5 feet of accumulated snow. My truck was running perfectly, and I was making incredible money, but the stress from the HOA situation was eating at me. Monday morning, I got a call from the Summit County Code Enforcement Office. A woman named Jennifer explained that they had received multiple complaints about my property and that an inspector would need to conduct a site visit within the next 2 weeks. "Can you tell me the nature of the complaints?" I asked. "Let me see here," Jennifer said, and I could hear papers rustling. "We have reports of commercial vehicles stored in a residential area without proper screening, noise disturbances from equipment operations before 7 a.m., and improper storage of fuel and chemicals. There are also complaints about snow being deposited on adjacent properties. Every single claim was false. I stored my trucks in a proper garage. I never ran equipment before 7 a.m. My fuel tanks were professionally installed and inspected, and I had never pushed snow onto anyone else's property." "Jennifer, I believe these complaints are being filed in bad faith by a neighboring HOA that is trying to force me into providing free services. Mr. Wilson, I cannot speak to the motivations behind complaints. I can only tell you that we are legally required to investigate. I can schedule an inspection for next Thursday if that works for you." I agreed to the inspection because I had nothing to hide, but I was furious. Patricia and her HOA were using government resources to harass me. That afternoon, Alan's cease and desist letter was delivered to both Patricia Hendricks and Stephen Morrison via certified mail. It laid out the facts clearly, explained that their actions constituted harassment and tortious interference, and demanded they immediately cease all contact with me and my clients. It also informed them that we would be pursuing legal action if the harassment continued. I thought maybe that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Wednesday evening, I was working in my garage when I heard vehicles approaching. 3 cars pulled up to my gate and 7 people got out. Patricia Hendricks led the group, followed by Stephen Morrison and 5 other people I did not recognize. I walked out to meet them at the gate, which was closed and locked. My property was clearly marked with no trespassing signs. "Mr. Wilson," Patricia called out, "we need to have a conversation about resolving this situation like adults. Patricia, you were sent a cease and desist letter. You should not be here. That letter was an overreaction by your attorney. We are simply neighbors trying to work out a misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding. You want me to work for free?" I said no. That should have been the end of it. Stephen Morrison stepped forward. He was maybe 50, wearing an expensive coat and the kind of smug expression that made me want to punch something. "Mr. Wilson, let me explain something about property law. Your access to Glacier Ridge Road depends on an easement that was granted by the original property owner in 1982. That easement includes language about maintaining good faith relationships with adjacent property owners and contributing to shared infrastructure maintenance. The road is county maintained," I shot back. "I pay property taxes that cover road maintenance. I do not owe your private streets anything. That is a matter of legal interpretation. What I am suggesting is that litigation would be expensive and time-consuming for both parties. Would it not be simpler to just be a good neighbor?" A woman next to Patricia spoke up. She looked to be in her mid-40s, with highlighted blonde hair and an attitude that screamed entitled soccer mom. "My children cannot get to school safely because our streets are not plowed. Do you really want to be responsible for endangering children?" "Lady, your streets not being plowed is not my responsibility. It is your HOA's responsibility. You collect dues specifically for services like snow removal." "Our contractor is overwhelmed," Patricia interjected. "All we are asking for is temporary assistance during this unprecedented weather event." "No," I said firmly. "The answer is no. Now get off my property before I call the sheriff." Patricia's face turned an interesting shade of red. You are making a serious mistake, Mr. Wilson. This community takes care of its own, and we do not forget when someone refuses to help their neighbors in need. I am not your neighbor. I specifically bought property outside your HOA to avoid dealing with people like you. Now leave." They stood there for another minute, clearly hoping I would back down. When I pulled out my phone and started dialing, they finally got back in their cars and left. But not before Patricia rolled down her window and shouted, "You will regret this." I called the sheriff's office anyway and filed a report about the trespassing. Deputy Martinez came out, took my statement, and advised me to keep my gate locked and my security cameras running. I had installed cameras 6 months earlier after someone kept stealing packages from rural properties in the area. Now, I was grateful for them. Thursday brought the code enforcement inspection. Jennifer showed up with a clipboard and a polite but professional demeanor. I gave her a complete tour of my property, showed her all my permits and licenses, and demonstrated that every single complaint filed against me was false. "Mr. Wilson, I have to be honest with you," Jennifer said as we finished up. "This is one of the most clearly frivolous complaint clusters I have seen in years. Everything on your property is not only legal but actually exceeds code requirements. I am going to close all these complaints as unfounded. Can you tell me who filed them?" The complaints came from multiple Pinewood Heights residents, but they all appear to have been coordinated. Same language, filed within hours of each other. That kind of pattern usually indicates an organized campaign. Can I get copies of the complaints? They are public record. I will email them to you this afternoon. When I received the complaint copies, I was not surprised to see names I recognized from the group that had shown up at my gate. I forwarded everything to Alan, who added it to our growing file of evidence. That weekend, another storm system moved in. Not as severe as the first one, but still dropping another 1.5 feet of snow across the area. I was back to working long days, and business was booming. The roads in Pinewood Heights remained unplowed because their contractor was apparently still overwhelmed. Monday morning, I woke up to find my gate chained shut from the outside. Someone had wrapped a heavy chain through the gate bars and secured it with a padlock, effectively trapping me on my own property. A note was zip-tied to the chain. "Until you learn to be a team player, you can sit this one out." I took photos of everything and called both Alan and the sheriff's office. Deputy Martinez came out again, looking increasingly annoyed with the situation. "Scott, this is criminal mischief and possibly false imprisonment. Do your cameras show who did this?" We reviewed the footage together. At 3:47 a.m., a dark SUV had pulled up to my gate. 2 people in heavy winter clothing got out, chained the gate, and left. The license plate was clearly visible. "I will run this plate," Martinez said. "But I am going to tell you right now, this situation is escalating in a way that worries me. Have you considered filing for a restraining order? Against who?" "The entire HOA. Against Patricia Hendricks, for starters. She seems to be the ringleader, and this level of harassment meets the threshold for a restraining order." The license plate came back registered to Robert Chen, the corporate litigation attorney who lived in Pinewood Heights. Martinez drove over to his house and had a very pointed conversation about criminal charges. Chen claimed he had loaned his vehicle to Patricia Hendricks the previous night and had no knowledge of what she had done with it. The chain was removed, and I was able to get back to work. But I took Martinez's advice seriously. Alan filed for a temporary restraining order against Patricia Hendricks that afternoon. The hearing was scheduled for the following Friday. For the next few days, things were relatively quiet. The restraining order petition had apparently spooked Patricia enough to back off on the direct harassment. But I started noticing other problems. Nails scattered across my driveway. One of my truck tires slashed overnight. Anonymous online reviews claiming my business was unreliable and unprofessional. Every incident was documented, photographed, and added to our legal file. Alan assured me that we were building an ironclad case, but I was exhausted. The constant stress was affecting my sleep, my work, and my general quality of life. Friday arrived, and we went to court for the restraining order hearing. Patricia showed up with Stephen Morrison acting as her attorney. She had dressed conservatively and put on a complete performance about being a concerned community leader who was just trying to keep her neighborhood safe. Judge Rachel Foster was a no-nonsense woman in her late 50s who had clearly seen every kind of HOA drama imaginable. She listened to both sides, reviewed the evidence, and then fixed Patricia with a stare that could melt steel. "Miss Hendricks, I have read through the documentation provided by Mr. Wilson's attorney. The pattern of behavior you have engaged in is textbook harassment. You have contacted his clients with false information, filed frivolous government complaints, trespassed on his property, and quite possibly conspired in criminal mischief. Can you explain to me why I should not grant this restraining order?" Patricia launched into a long speech about community values and shared responsibility, and how she was only trying to protect her residents. Judge Foster cut her off. "Miss Hendricks, Mr. Wilson does not live in your HOA. He has no contractual or legal obligation to provide services to your community. Your persistent attempts to force him into compliance constitute harassment. I am granting a temporary restraining order. You are to have no contact with Mr. Wilson, direct or indirect. You are not to go to his property, contact his clients, or make any statements about him or his business. This order is effective for 1 year, and if you violate it, you will face criminal charges. Do you understand?" Patricia's face went white, then red, then almost purple. "Your Honor, this is ridiculous. I am a respected member of this community, and you are a person who has been harassing your neighbor for weeks. One more word and I will hold you in contempt. Court is adjourned." I walked out of that courtroom feeling like I had won the lottery. Alan was grinning. "That went better than I expected. Foster does not mess around with HOA cases. So this is over. The restraining order is in place for a year. If Patricia violates it, she will be arrested. That should be enough to make her back off." I wanted to believe him. I really did. For about 10 days, everything was quiet. Patricia had apparently told the other HOA members about the restraining order, and the harassment stopped. I went back to focusing on my business, which was thriving despite the attempted sabotage. Then we got hit with the mother of all snowstorms. The Weather Service had been tracking a massive system for days, and when it finally arrived on March 12th, it was worse than predicted. 36 inches of snow in the first 24 hours, with winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour. The entire county basically shut down. I worked around the clock. My truck was a beast in these conditions, and I had clients who absolutely needed access cleared. Hospitals, fire stations, emergency services. I barely slept for 3 days straight. By the morning of March 15th, the storm had finally passed. The sun came out, revealing a landscape buried under nearly 5 feet of snow in some areas. Drifts were 10 to 15 feet high where the wind had piled snow against buildings and barriers. I was exhausted, running on caffeine and stubbornness. I had just finished clearing the parking lot at Summit Medical when my phone rang. It was Derek. "Scott, man, you need to know what is happening. Patricia called an emergency HOA meeting last night and things got crazy." "What kind of crazy?" She is telling everyone that you are personally responsible for the fact that Pinewood Heights is completely snowed in. Our streets are impassable, and our contractor says it will be at least another week before they can get to us. Patricia is saying that because of your selfishness and the restraining order preventing her from negotiating with you, people are trapped in their homes and it is a safety hazard. Derek, that is insane. How is any of this my fault? I know, dude. I stood up and said exactly that. But she has people worked up. There is talk about filing a civil lawsuit against you for creating a public safety hazard. Stephen Morrison is drafting something. I was too tired to even process this properly. Let them try. I have done nothing wrong. There is something else, Scott. Patricia said something about taking matters into her own hands. She was really cryptic about it, but it made me nervous. I think she is planning something. She has a restraining order. If she comes near me or my property, she goes to jail. Just be careful, okay? These people are not thinking rationally. I promised Derek I would stay alert and headed home to get a few hours of sleep. My entire body ached, and I was looking forward to a hot shower in my bed. I should have listened more carefully to Derek's warning. I woke up around 4 p.m. to the sound of heavy equipment. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but then I heard it again. The unmistakable rumble of a large truck or plow. I threw on clothes and went outside. The sound was coming from the direction of Glacier Ridge Road, near where it connected to the Pinewood Heights entrance. I got in my truck and drove down my driveway to investigate. What I found made my blood boil. Patricia Hendricks was sitting in the cab of a rented snowplow, and she was systematically pushing massive amounts of snow directly into the entrance of my driveway. Not just a little snow. She was creating a wall of packed snow and ice at least 12 feet high and 20 feet deep, completely blocking my access to the public road. I laid on my horn. Patricia looked up, saw me, and actually waved before pushing another massive load of snow into the blockade. I jumped out of my truck. Patricia, what the hell are you doing? She climbed down from the plow cab with a smile that can only be described as unhinged. Mr. Wilson, I am so glad you are here to see this. You see, I realized something. You are absolutely right that we cannot force you to plow our streets. But we also do not have to make it easy for you to access the public road. This snow has to go somewhere, and I have decided it should go right here. You are blocking my driveway. That is illegal, actually. I am depositing snow on the county road right of way. Perfectly legal. If it happens to make accessing your property difficult, well, that is just an unfortunate side effect. You have a restraining order. You cannot be anywhere near my property. I am on the county road, not your property. And I am simply removing snow from our neighborhood streets. Judge Foster said I could not contact you or harass you. I'm not contacting you. You came out here. And I am just doing what you refused to do, taking care of our community snow removal. She climbed back into the plow and pushed another load of snow onto the pile. The wall was now well over 12 feet high and growing. Even with my truck's power, there was no way I was getting through that without hours of work. I called 911. Dispatch put me through to Deputy Martinez, who said he would be there as soon as possible. But the roads were still rough, and it might take 30 to 40 minutes. Patricia worked fast. By the time Martinez arrived, she had created a snow barrier that was truly impressive in its malicious architecture. 12 feet high, packed solid, and strategically positioned to completely block my driveway entrance while technically being on the county road right of way. Martinez surveyed the situation with a grim expression. Miss Hendricks, can you explain what you are doing here? Officer, I am providing snow removal services for my HOA. We rented this equipment because our contractor was delayed, and I am simply depositing the snow in an area that seems suitable. You are blocking Mr. Wilson's driveway. The snow is on the county right-of-way. I have not touched his private property. Miss Hendricks, you have a restraining order that specifically prohibits you from harassing Mr. Wilson. I am not harassing anyone. I am removing snow from my neighborhood. If Mr. Wilson feels harassed, perhaps he is just overly sensitive. I could see Martinez trying to figure out the legal technicalities. Patricia was right that the snow was technically on county property, not mine, but the intent was clearly to harass and block my access. Miss Hendricks, I am going to need you to remove this snow from the road right-of-way. Officer, I am afraid I cannot do that. The rental company is picking up this equipment in an hour, and I am not authorized to use it for anything other than clearing HOA streets. If the county has an issue with where the snow was deposited, perhaps they should assign their own crews to relocate it. Martinez looked at me apologetically. Scott, I am going to document this and file a report about the restraining order violation, but in terms of immediate action, my hands are tied. The snow is on county property, and she is technically not on your land. Patricia smiled triumphantly, climbed back into the Plow, and drove off toward Pinewood Heights. Martinez and I stood there looking at the massive snow wall blocking my driveway. This is insane, I said. She is clearly violating the spirit of the restraining order. I agree. I will make sure this is included in my report, and the district attorney will probably want to pursue contempt charges. But for right now, you are going to need to clear that snow yourself. After Martinez left, I stood there in the cold, looking at Patricia's handiwork. The sun was setting and the temperature was dropping fast. That snow was going to freeze solid overnight, making it even harder to remove. Then an idea hit me. A beautifully petty, completely legal, absolutely justified idea. Patricia wanted to play games with snow removal. Fine. I could play that game better than anyone. I drove back to my garage and spent the next hour preparing. I had all the equipment I needed, and more importantly, I had the skills and knowledge that Patricia clearly lacked. Around 8 p.m., when it was fully dark and most people had gone inside for the night, I fired up my truck and headed out. Instead of trying to clear the snow wall Patricia had created, I drove around the long way, using a network of county roads to get to the main entrance of Pinewood Heights. The entrance to the HOA community was marked by a fancy stone sign and an automated gate system. The gate was currently open because the snow had interfered with the automatic closing mechanism. Beyond the gate, Ridgecrest Avenue ran straight into the heart of the neighborhood. I positioned my truck carefully, angled my plow blade to maximum width, and started working. The beauty of my plan was simple. Patricia had removed snow from the HOA streets by pushing it onto the county road. I was going to return the favor by relocating that snow right back into the HOA entrance. I worked methodically, using the same techniques Patricia had employed. I gathered snow from the massive piles she had created and pushed it all directly into the Pinewood Heights entrance. Load after load, building a wall just like she had built for me. The difference was that I was better at this. I knew exactly how to pack snow for maximum density and stability. I knew how to angle the blade to create a wall that would not just block the entrance, but would be almost impossible to remove without professional equipment. It took me about 3 hours, but when I was finished, I had created a snow barrier that was magnificent in its completeness. 14 feet high at the peak, 40 feet deep, packed solid as concrete, and positioned perfectly to block the only entrance to Pinewood Heights. The automated gate was completely buried. The fancy stone sign was barely visible above the snow. and every single resident of the HOA was now trapped inside their neighborhood with no way to get out, unless they wanted to hike through several miles of deep snow. I took photos and videos documenting my work, making sure to show that every bit of snow had come from the county right-of-way, and that I had not damaged any HOA property. Then I drove home the long way, parked my truck in my garage, and went to bed with a smile on my face. My phone started ringing at 6:30 a.m. I ignored it. By 7 a.m. I had 47 missed calls and countless text messages. I made coffee, fed my dog, and finally checked my voicemails. The panic in Patricia's voice was beautiful. "Mr. Wilson, you need to come remove this snow immediately. People cannot get out of the neighborhood. We have medical emergencies and work obligations, and you are trapping us here." Stephen Morrison's message was more measured but equally desperate. "Mr. Wilson, this is Stephen Morrison. Whatever dispute you have with the HOA, blocking our entrance is dangerous and potentially illegal. We need to resolve this situation immediately." Derek's message made me laugh out loud. "Scott, you absolute legend. I just looked outside and saw what you did. Patricia is losing her mind. She is literally standing at the snow wall screaming, 'This is the greatest thing I have ever seen. Call me when you get a chance.'" I finished my coffee and called Alan Tucker, who answered sounding way too cheerful for 7:30 in the morning. "Scott, I heard about your artistic snow sculpture project. The whole legal community is talking about it. Is what I did legal?" "Well, let me see. You moved snow from county right-of-way property using your licensed commercial equipment. You did not trespass on HOA property. You did not damage any private property. And you were essentially returning snow that had been illegally dumped on the county road. From a purely legal standpoint, you have not done anything wrong. Is it petty? Absolutely. Is it hilarious? 100%. Is it illegal? Probably not. So I do not have to move it. You have no legal obligation to move snow from a county road. That is the county's responsibility. Now, the HOA could hire someone to remove it, but given how well you packed that wall, it is going to take days and cost them thousands of dollars." I spent the morning ignoring phone calls and taking care of my regular clients. Around noon, Deputy Martinez showed up at my property. He did not look happy. "Scott, I am going to assume you know why I am here. I am guessing Patricia filed a complaint." Patricia, Stephen Morrison, and about 15 other HOA residents all filed complaints. They are claiming you have illegally blocked their neighborhood entrance and are trapping residents inside. Did they mention that Patricia blocked my driveway first? They did not. But I saw the photos in my report from yesterday. "Scott, what exactly did you do last night?" I explained my actions in detail, emphasizing that I had only moved snow from county property and had not touched anything belonging to the HOA. Martinez listened, occasionally shaking his head. "You realize this is going to get ugly, right?" It already was ugly. "Patricia started this when she tried to extort free labor from me. Then she violated a restraining order to block my driveway. I just returned the snow to where it came from. By burying their only entrance under 14 feet of packed snow." "Is that illegal?" Martinez actually laughed. "Technically, no. You moved snow on public property using legal means. But Scott, you have essentially trapped an entire neighborhood. They are threatening to call the governor's office, the state police, and every news station in Colorado. Let them. I have documentation of everything Patricia and her HOA have done. If they want to make this a media circus, I am happy to explain how we got here." Martinez left shaking his head, but I could tell he was secretly amused by the whole situation. Over the next few hours, the calls and messages intensified. People were genuinely panicked. Someone claimed they had a doctor's appointment they could not miss. Another person insisted their prescription medication was running out. A woman said her son had a college interview in Denver that he would miss if he could not get out. I felt a tiny bit guilty about the innocent residents caught in the middle of this. But then I remembered all the harassment, the threats, the attempted destruction of my business, and the guilt evaporated. They had elected Patricia as their HOA president. They paid dues that funded her harassment campaign. They were not innocent bystanders. Around 3 p.m., I got a call from a number I did not recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Mr. Wilson, my name is Helen Martinez, and I am a producer with 9 News in Denver. We received multiple calls about a situation in Breckenridge involving an HOA dispute and a blocked entrance. Would you be willing to provide a statement?" "What kind of statement?" "We are trying to understand both sides of this situation. The HOA claims you have illegally trapped them in their neighborhood. We would like to hear your perspective." I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "Sure. When do you want to talk?" The news crew arrived at my property within 2 hours. Helen Martinez was professional and thorough, and I gave her the complete story. I showed her the documentation of Patricia's initial demands, the harassment of my clients, the frivolous government complaints, the trespassing, the chaining of my gate, and finally, the blocking of my driveway that had precipitated my snow removal response. I also showed her the restraining order and explained how Patricia had technically complied with its letter while violating its spirit. Helen interviewed several Pinewood Heights residents, including Patricia, who made the mistake of going on camera while still furious and emotional. Patricia ranted about community obligations and selfish neighbors and legal action, coming across as exactly the kind of entitled HOA tyrant that everyone loves to hate. The story aired on the 6 p.m. news and immediately went viral. By 8 p.m., it was trending on social media. By 10 p.m., national news outlets were picking it up. By midnight, I had interview requests from CNN, Fox News, NPR, and about 20 podcasts. The public response was overwhelmingly in my favor. People who had their own HOA horror stories came out in droves to support me. Social media was full of memes about Patricia and jokes about snow walls. The hashtag Snowdrift Justice started trending, but the situation in Pinewood Heights was getting genuinely problematic. By the second day, people were running low on food and supplies. The snow wall was frozen solid and proved resistant to every attempt at removal. The HOA's contractor showed up with equipment but could not make meaningful progress because of how well I had packed the snow. Derek called me on the evening of the second day. "Scott, man, I am not going to lie. Things are getting rough in here. Mrs. Peterson down the street has a heart condition and missed her cardiology appointment. The Ramirez family ran out of diapers for their baby. People are hiking out through the back trails to get supplies, but it is dangerous. Derek, I did not want innocent people to suffer." "I know, dude. And honestly, most of the neighborhood blames Patricia, not you. She is basically persona non grata right now. People are talking about recalling her as HOA president, but we do need to find a resolution." That night, I thought long and hard about the situation. My point had been made. Patricia was humiliated nationally, the HOA's reputation was destroyed, and I had clear evidence that I had been harassed and retaliated against unjustly. But I was not a monster. I did not actually want people to suffer. The next morning, I called Alan Tucker. "I want to propose a settlement." "What kind of settlement?" "I will clear the entrance to Pinewood Heights. In exchange, Patricia Hendricks has to resign as HOA president. The HOA has to issue a public apology, they have to pay for my legal fees, and they have to agree to a permanent easement clarifying that I have zero obligations to their community. That is reasonable. Let me reach out to their attorney. Stephen Morrison called me directly within an hour. He sounded exhausted. Mr. Wilson, my client, is willing to discuss your terms. Which client? Patricia or the HOA? Both. Patricia has agreed to resign from the board. The HOA is prepared to issue an apology and cover your reasonable legal expenses. We can draft an easement agreement clarifying the boundaries of responsibility. I want it in writing, signed by Patricia personally, before I move any snow. Understood. I will have documents prepared by this afternoon. The documents arrived via email at 4 p.m. Alan reviewed them and confirmed everything was in order. Patricia's resignation letter was particularly satisfying to read. She acknowledged that her actions had been inappropriate, and that she had allowed personal feelings to interfere with her judgment as HOA president. The HOA's apology was posted on their official website and social media pages, admitting that they had unfairly harassed a non-member and promising to respect property boundaries in the future. The easement agreement was detailed and comprehensive, explicitly stating that I had no obligations whatsoever to Pinewood Heights, and that the HOA had no authority over my property or business operations. Everything was signed, notarized, and filed with the county by 6 p.m. At 7 p.m., I fired up my truck and drove to the Pinewood Heights entrance. A crowd had gathered, including news cameras that had been camping out for the past 3 days. I worked for 6 hours straight, systematically dismantling the snow wall I had created. By 1 a.m., the entrance was clear. Cars started pouring out immediately, people desperate to get to stores, pharmacies, and appointments they had missed. Some people thanked me as they drove past. Others glared. One guy gave me a thumbs up and shouted, "You are a legend, man." Patricia's house had a for sale sign in the yard within a week. I heard through Derek that she was moving to Arizona. Stephen Morrison quietly withdrew from representing the HOA and referred them to another attorney. The code enforcement complaints against me were formally closed and expunged from the record. Jennifer from the county office even called to apologize for the hassle I had endured. My business exploded with new clients. Apparently, standing up to an abusive HOA made me a folk hero in certain circles. I got contracts from 3 new commercial properties and had to hire 2 additional employees to handle the demand. The restraining order against Patricia remained in effect, though it became moot when she left the state. The district attorney decided not to pursue contempt charges given that the situation had been resolved. Alan Tucker sent me a final bill that was about 1/3 of what I expected. When I called to ask about it, he laughed. "Scott, you have made my month. I have not had this much fun with a case in years. Consider it a friends and family discount." Derek and I remained friends, and he kept me updated on the HOA drama. Patricia's replacement as president was a retired teacher named Dorothy who immediately implemented reforms, including term limits for board members and more transparent decision-making processes. The Pinewood Heights HOA became significantly less dysfunctional. I even helped them out eventually. The following winter, during another major storm, I plowed their streets. But I did it as a paid contractor, with a proper written agreement and fair compensation for my time and equipment. Dorothy was professional and gracious, and we developed a good working relationship. The whole experience taught me several valuable lessons about standing up to bullies, the importance of documentation, and the power of petty revenge done within legal boundaries. It also taught me that most people, when given the choice, will side with the little guy against abusive authority figures. 6 months later, I was at a local coffee shop when a woman approached me. I recognized her as one of the Pinewood Heights residents who had been trapped by my snow wall. "Are you Scott Wilson?" she asked. I braced myself for a confrontation. "Yes, madam," she smiled. "I wanted to thank you. That whole situation was a wake-up call for our neighborhood. We had let Patricia turn our HOA into her personal fiefdom, and we were all too passive to stop her. What you did forced us to take responsibility and make changes. Our community is so much better now." "I appreciate that, but I am sorry you got caught in the middle of it. Do not be. Sometimes people need a dramatic wake-up call. A 14-foot snow wall definitely qualifies." That conversation stuck with me. I had gone into the situation angry and defensive, just trying to protect myself and my business. But the outcome had actually improved things for the entire community. The legal settlement with the HOA included a provision that they pay me $3,000 for legal fees and expenses. I donated that money to a local charity that helped families with winter heating costs. It felt like the right way to close that chapter. My property remains my sanctuary. I still wake up grateful every day that I live outside the HOA boundaries, with the freedom to run my business without interference. My trucks are parked proudly in my driveway, my equipment is stored in my garage, and nobody tells me what color I can paint my front door. The 12-foot snowdrift that blocked the Pinewood Heights entrance became local legend. I still get recognized sometimes, and people want to hear the story firsthand. It has been featured on podcasts, YouTube channels, and at least one legal blog about HOA overreach. Patricia Hendricks became a cautionary tale about what happens when petty power goes unchecked. Stephen Morrison learned that lending your legal credentials to harassment campaigns can damage your reputation. And the residents of Pinewood Heights learned that holding their leaders accountable matters. As for me, I learned that sometimes the best response to bullying is not to back down, not to compromise, and definitely not to provide free labor to people who treat you with contempt. I learned that careful documentation can save you in legal disputes. I learned that public opinion matters, especially in the age of viral social media. But most importantly, I learned that standing up for yourself, even when it is difficult and stressful and expensive, is worth it. Not just for your own dignity, but because it sets a precedent. It shows other people that they do not have to tolerate abuse from HOAs or any other petty tyrants who think rules do not apply to them. The snow eventually melted, spring came to the Colorado mountains, and life returned to normal. But I will never forget that winter, the harassment campaign, the restraining order, and the night I spent building a monument to petty justice out of packed snow. Sometimes people ask me if I would do it differently if I could go back. The answer is no. I would not change a thing. Patricia got exactly what she deserved. The HOA learned a valuable lesson, and I protected my livelihood and my rights. And honestly, the look on Patricia's face when she first saw that snow wall blocking her precious HOA entrance, that memory is priceless. Worth every hour of lost sleep, every dollar of legal fees, and every minute of stress. Because in the end, justice served cold at 14 feet high and packed solid with Colorado snow is justice served perfectly. The following months brought unexpected opportunities. I was contacted by a lawyer in Denver who specialized in HOA law, asking if I would be willing to consult on other cases involving HOA overreach. Apparently, my documentation and methodical approach to fighting back had created a blueprint that other people could follow. I declined the consulting work because I had a business to run. but I did agree to let them use my case as an example in training materials for property owners dealing with abusive HOAs. Alan Tucker became something of a minor celebrity in property law circles, and he sent me a bottle of excellent bourbon as thanks for the referral business that came his way. The media attention gradually faded, as it always does. New stories emerged, new scandals captured public attention, and the tale of the Breckenridge snow wall became just another viral moment that people vaguely remembered. But in Summit County, the story persisted. It became part of local lore, the kind of thing people told newcomers about. The crazy winter when an HOA president tried to bully the wrong guy and ended up buried under her own arrogance, quite literally. I ran into Stephen Morrison at a county planning meeting about a year after everything went down. He approached me cautiously, probably unsure if I held a grudge. "Scott, I owe you an apology," he said. "I let Patricia convince me that we had a legitimate legal argument. I should have recognized it for what it was, harassment and intimidation. It was not my finest moment as an attorney." I appreciated the apology. "We all make mistakes, Stephen. You owned yours. That counts for something." For what it is worth, that situation changed how I approach HOA cases now. I am a lot more careful about whether my clients are actually in the right or just looking for legal muscle to bully their neighbors. We parted on good terms, and I gained a healthy respect for someone willing to admit they were wrong and learn from it. Derek and his family remained close friends. His wife Emily became one of my best clients for landscaping work, and their kids loved visiting my property to see the trucks and equipment. Derek eventually joined the reformed Pinewood Heights HOA board, working with Dorothy to keep things running smoothly and fairly. The property values in Pinewood Heights actually increased after the leadership change. Turns out that having a reasonable, functional HOA is better for property values than having a dictator who drives away potential buyers with horror stories. My business continued to grow. I bought a second plow truck and hired a full-time employee, a young guy named Marcus who had just moved to Colorado and needed work. Training him was satisfying, and it freed me up to focus on the management and business development side of things. I even started offering snow removal services to other small mountain communities, but always with proper contracts, clear terms, and fair compensation. Word spread that I was reliable, professional, and absolutely would not tolerate being taken advantage of. That reputation served me well. 2 winters after the incident, we got another massive storm system. This time, when Dorothy from the Pinewood Heights HOA called, it was with a polite request and an offer of our contracted rate plus a bonus for priority service. "Scott, I know you probably have a lot of clients to take care of," she said. "But if you have any availability, we would really appreciate your help. And of course, we will pay you properly for your time." I cleared their streets that afternoon, and when I was done, several residents came out to thank me personally. One older gentleman shook my hand and said, "You know, that whole mess with Patricia was the best thing that ever happened to this neighborhood. We needed someone to knock some sense into us." The snow wall had become a symbol, a reminder that accountability matters and that communities function better when leaders serve the people instead of their own egos. I eventually expanded my business into year-round property management services. The winter snow removal remained the most profitable part of the operation, but I also offered landscaping, lawn care, and general property maintenance. The business became successful enough that I was able to buy an additional 20 acres adjacent to my original property. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. I had my work, my property, my dog, and my peace of mind. The whole HOA situation became a story I told at parties, usually to the delight of anyone who had ever dealt with their own HOA nightmares. But the lesson remained fresh in my mind. Stand up for yourself. Document everything. Do not let bullies intimidate you into giving up your rights. And if pushed far enough, find creative, legal ways to push back harder. The mountains of Colorado have a way of teaching you about boundaries and respect. The elevation demands respect for nature's power. The weather demands preparation and planning. And apparently, the local HOA demanded a 14-foot snow wall to learn about respecting property rights. I would not trade that experience for anything. It made me tougher, smarter, and more confident in my ability to handle whatever challenges came my way. It connected me with my community in unexpected ways and actually improved my business reputation. And every winter, when the first big snow falls, I think about that night. The cold, the darkness, the methodical work of building that wall, the satisfaction of creative problem-solving and justified revenge, the knowledge that sometimes the right response to unreasonable people is to give them exactly what they gave you, but bigger and better and more permanent. The snow eventually melts, but the lessons remain. Patricia Hendricks learned that power without accountability leads to downfall. Stephen Morrison learned that lending your professional credentials to harassment has consequences. The Pinewood Heights HOA learned that good governance matters. And I learned that I am fully capable of standing my ground, protecting my rights, and building a damn fine snow wall when the situation calls for it. That is the story of how an HOA demanded I plow their roads for free, and I responded by blocking their gate with a 12-foot snowdrift. It is a story about boundaries, respect, accountability, and the sweet taste of justified revenge served frozen solid. Years from now, when people ask me about the craziest thing that ever happened in my business, this will always be the answer. Not the biggest contract I ever landed, not the most difficult job I ever completed, but the time I stood up to a bully with a snowplow and a sense of justice. And you know what? I would do it again in a heartbeat. Because sometimes, the only way to deal with people who refuse to respect boundaries is to build a wall so big, so solid, and so undeniable that they have no choice but to acknowledge they crossed a line. My wall just happened to be made of snow, packed 14 feet high, and frozen as solid as my determination to not be pushed around. The final chapter of this saga came when I received a formal letter from the new Pinewood Heights HOA board, about 3 years after the initial incident. They wanted to commission a plaque to be placed near the neighborhood entrance, commemorating the events that led to their governance reform. I thought they were joking at first, but Dorothy assured me they were serious. The plaque ended up being tasteful, reading, "In recognition of the winter of accountability, when our community learned that good neighbors require good governance, may we never forget the lessons learned when boundaries were crossed and respect was earned." It did not mention my name or the specific details, but everyone in the neighborhood knew exactly what it referred to. I attended the unveiling ceremony, and the current HOA board thanked me publicly for being a catalyst for positive change. Standing there that day, looking at the plaque and the rebuilt entrance that I had once buried under tons of snow, I felt a profound sense of closure. The battle had been won not just in terms of legal victories or public opinion, but in genuine positive change for a whole community. That is something Patricia Hendricks never understood. Leadership is not about control or forcing compliance. It is about service, respect, and working together toward common goals. When she forgot that, She set in motion a chain of events that ultimately replaced her with better leaders and improved life for everyone in Pinewood Heights. My business continues to thrive. I now employ 5 people year-round and up to 8 during peak winter season. We service clients throughout Summit County, and we have earned a reputation for excellence and integrity. Every contract I sign, every client I serve, I remember the lessons from that winter. The relationship between my property and Pinewood Heights is now cordial and professional. We respect each other's boundaries, communicate clearly, and handle any issues that arise with mutual respect. It is everything it should have been from the beginning, before Patricia's arrogance turned a simple neighbor relationship into a war. I still live on my original 5 acres, though I have made improvements over the years. The garage is bigger now to house my growing fleet of equipment. I built a proper office for handling the business administration. And I installed an even better security system, though I have not needed it for anything more serious than catching package thieves. The gate where Patricia once chained me in now has a small memorial. Not an official one, just something I put up for myself. A simple sign that reads, "Private property, boundaries respected here." It reminds me every day of what I fought for and why it mattered. Sometimes, on quiet winter nights when snow is falling gently and the mountains are peaceful, I walk outside and look toward where Pinewood Heights sits beyond the tree line. I think about how a simple request for free labor turned into a viral news story, a legal battle, and ultimately, positive change for an entire community. The irony is not lost on me that Patricia could have avoided all of this by simply respecting my initial no. If she had accepted that I was not obligated to help her HOA, none of the subsequent drama would have happened. Her residence would not have been trapped, her reputation would not have been destroyed, and she would probably still be living in Colorado instead of Arizona. But she could not accept no for an answer. She could not respect boundaries. She could not understand that power comes with limits and that pushing too hard leads to pushback. So she got a snow wall. 14 feet of frozen, packed, undeniable consequence for her actions. And I got vindication, justice, and a really good story that I will be telling for the rest of my life. The mountains taught me about respect for nature's power. The HOA battle taught me about respect for personal boundaries and property rights. And building that snow wall taught me that sometimes the best defense is a creative, legal, and absolutely satisfying offense. I am Scott Wilson. I run a successful property management business in Summit County, Colorado, and I once buried an entire HOA entrance under a 12-foot snowdrift because they refused to respect my rights as an independent property owner. And I have absolutely no regrets about any of it. That is how you deal with an HOA that demands you plow their roads for free. You remind them that boundaries matter, respect is not optional, and karma can be delivered by a Ford F-550 with a Boss V plow blade at 2 a.m. on a cold March night. The snow melted, spring came, and life moved on. But the lessons remained, frozen permanently in my memory like that wall once blocked their entrance. Stand your ground. Document everything. Respect boundaries and demand respect in return. And when necessary, fight back with every legal tool at your disposal. Because at the end of the day, your rights, your business, and your dignity are worth fighting for. Even if it means building the most epic snow wall in Colorado history and becoming a viral sensation in the process. That is my story. That is my truth. And that is how you handle an HOA that forgets the most basic rule of being a neighbor. Leave people alone who have done nothing wrong, respect their boundaries, and understand that nobody owes you free labor just because you asked for it. Patricia learned that lesson the hard way. The Pinewood Heights HOA learned it through public embarrassment and internal reform. And I learned that standing up for yourself, no matter how difficult or stressful, is always worth it in the end. The winter of the snow wall is over, but its legacy lives on in every contract I sign that clearly defines boundaries and obligations. In every time I politely but firmly say no to unreasonable requests. And in every conversation I have with other small business owners about standing up to bullies. Because that is what Patricia was, a bully with an HOA title who thought her position gave her authority over people who never agreed to her governance. And like all bullies, she crumbled when someone finally stood up to her with equal determination and better strategy. I won because I was right, because I documented everything, because I had good legal counsel, and because I was willing to take creative action within legal boundaries. But mostly, I won because I refused to give up, even when the pressure and harassment seemed overwhelming. That is the real story behind the snow wall, not just the petty revenge, though that was satisfying, not just the viral media coverage, though that was helpful, but the determination to stand up for principle, to defend my rights and my business, and to show that ordinary people can fight back against abusive authority figures and win. The snow wall was just frozen water, piled high and packed solid. But what it represented was far more important. The line between right and wrong, the boundary between respectful neighbors and abusive tyrants, and the proof that when pushed hard enough, even the quietest person can push back in ways that change everything. That is my legacy from the winter of 2025. A snow wall that melted, but a lesson that remains frozen in time, teaching anyone who hears the story that boundaries matter, respect is mandatory, and justice, when served cold and 14 feet high, is justice at its most satisfying. I am Scott Wilson, and I blocked an HOA gate with a 12-foot snowdrift because they demanded I plow their roads for free. It was legal, it was justified, and it was absolutely worth every second of effort, and I would do it again tomorrow if I had to.